Thanks for joining us here at the Recovery Stories for 2022. So excited about what Mel, Abbott and myself have constructed in the last 3 weeks, which has been so exciting. And we just, at the spur of the moment, decided, you know what, we both had chronic fatigue, 11 years and 12 years. And we wanted to get stories out. We wanted to publish stories so people can get, one, inspired by the recovery, two, look at it as if, wow, if they can do it, maybe I can. And what is your recipe for recovering? We want to hear all the stories, because behind every person there is a story, and behind every story we want to know that. We want to unleash it out and discuss it. And today, this is our third episode today, which I'm super excited for. You're going to hear a story from someone today, and I'll hand over to Mel Abbott, who will introduce it. I have actually got no idea about the backstory, but I'm super excited to answer the questions to see what her recovery is like. So I'll hand it over to Mel.
Excellent. So yeah, it's so exciting co-running this series with you, Richie. I'm loving it. And today we have Shannon joining us. Shannon has got 2 exciting recovery stories to share with us today. So what she found is that her 2 recoveries were actually very intertwined. So she's decided to share them both with us today, which is pretty exciting. So there's a physical health journey and an emotional health journey. Welcome, Shannon. Great to have you here.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. I'm stoked that you 2 have partnered up like this. It's been really interesting watching what you've produced so far. When I was 12, I contracted what they called double pneumonia. I was in hospital for a month, and at one point, everyone was gathered around my hospital bed saying goodbye to me. I was in an induced coma for a week or 10 days.
Was this when you were 12, did you say?
This is when I was 12.
Family are having to say goodbye to you, thinking it's the end.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember waking up at maybe like in the wee hours of the morning, and I'd had people from school bringing me letters and stuffed toys. I just had my hospital bed in like the adult ICU ward was just surrounded by get well cards and presents, and my cabinet next to my bed was full of chocolates and sweets that I couldn't eat. I couldn't stomach anything. And I remember waking up at about 3 a.m. or something and like, I'm probably gonna die soon, so I should probably eat all of these sweets and chocolates and everything, because, well, you know, I don't want my brother eating them. So I think my train of thought. So I ate everything and I threw it all up. But it was the satisfying moment of like, well, I feel like I can go now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. So with all your competitive edge that you've got, you still wanted to eat all those so your brother wouldn't have them. But what was that like? So what was that moment like for you? Like knowing that this is the end, what was it? What did it feel like? What was going through your head?
It was very accepting. It was almost like quite a deadened feeling inside myself. And I noticed as I'm telling it that there's a release of, I don't know, stress hormones inside my body that I can breathe through, you know. But it definitely, my body is still has a response to thinking about that and how intense a time it was. I was about, I don't know, maybe 5 foot or so at 12, like quite a tall 12-year-old. And when I came like through my recovery journey coming out of hospital, I weighed about 30 kilos when I got out, and I couldn't walk. I hadn't walked for a month or so, and I had to relearn how to walk again. And it took me about a year to go back to school, and still I was like, I had it on a number of occasions where I was coughing, still coughing up a lot and producing a lot of sputum. In hospital, I'd had a pipe. They had to break through the tissue between my ribs to insert a pipe into my lungs to drain all of the fluid, because I started drowning in my own fluid. Yeah. And yeah, and then on a number of occasions, I forget what the doctors call it, but where the lung tissue was so thin from the repeated and virulent infections that I would start internally bleeding in my lungs and just start breathing up blood. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Cannot
I was,
believe
yeah.
That's intense.
that is intense.
It's super intense. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not many
Yeah.
people that have really closely contemplated, I'm going to die any moment as a 12-year-old, or even as
Yeah.
an adult. How many people have
Mm,
been right at that moment, and to come back
But
from all that is pretty amazing.
So 30 kg, 1 year off school, coughing, draining the liquid from your lungs, severe infection. What next? What followed that?
yeah.
That's
What followed was me being quite a sickly, very, very skinny teenager. And when I was 15, we immigrated here to Aotearoa. And the next 20 years I spent with my health being a huge focus of my life. About cumulatively, about every year, I spent about 3 months on antibiotics. I had antibiotics on my bedside table. Like, I wouldn't go anywhere. I wouldn't go on holiday without a pretty intense, like, broad spectrum antibiotic in my bag. And I was on, so I would always have my asthma inhaler, the preventative and the one that you would, your more traditional one that you'd take on the sports field or whatever. And I was very careful about my diet. I found that I couldn't eat milk or eggs. It was just tasted too much like sputum. And it experienced a lot of bullying at school as well for being like the sickly kid. But when we moved to New Zealand, I wrote on my hands, carpe diem, like, seize the day. Like, you've got this day, go and make friends. I knew what it was like to fight to be there. So every day was, what can I make out of it? And there was definitely some PTSD that occurred from this experience, and from my experience with an abusive parent, like pretty significantly abusive parent. So my home life was very stressful, and I feel that contributed greatly to the illness that my body ended up doing from there. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just looking just for one trauma, abusive parents. The decision you just made before that, I'm going to get out and make friends. Currently, with your state of mind particularly, and your physical body is not absolutely in a state where it is conducive to anything else. If you look at 3 years of antibiotics, that's going to kill your microbiome, clearly.
100%.
Wow, yeah. I'm just so fascinated by this story, Shannon. I'm just, wow, blown away.
Yeah, I know that it continued to, so your lungs continued to degenerate, didn't they? Like, from what I hear, things had got really serious again at the point where you and I met. Can you tell us about what was about to happen and how bad things had got at that stage?
Yeah, so I suppose I was getting pretty desperate to be well. I felt that, like, I don't know 100% if what was happening was through repeated infections. Like, I pretty much had chronic bronchitis, chronic sinusitis as well. I had inhalers. I was on, before I came to Mull, I was on anti-anxiety medications, sleeping pills that I was taking every day, antidepressants, the 2 different kinds of asthma inhalers, on antibiotics pretty regularly, and a really, really focused diet, like working to eat as healthy as possible. I was doing a lot of exercise and yoga to help the sputum move out of my body. I was doing intensive cardio a couple of times a week, and just doing anything that I possibly could to find joy and happiness in my life. And at this point, I was also doing my master's thesis, which was incredibly stressful. I had, like, my father was this, I don't want to say sort of too much about my dad here, but it was a huge source of stress in my life. And at this point, I really felt like a need to be understood by the world. And I discovered spoon theory, which I understand now to be a great part of my descent into doing more illness. The concept of spoon theory is that you've only got so many spoons, which is like your amount of energy in a day. Richie, you're nodding. Do you know? You've heard of this?
No, I know the methodology, and I just know where you're coming from, and I'm just loving every moment of what you're saying.
Right. That's good. Yeah, so I really had this feeling that I only had so much energy to expend each day, this feeling of an invisible illness, looking like I was well to everyone around me. But I think the amount of stress that I was exposing myself to and the choices that I was making in my life, I was just doing more and more illness and feeling sicker and sicker, to the extent that I'd really have to amp myself up to be able to drive home, and then wouldn't have the energy to get out of my car, and my partner would have to come and like pick me up out of my car and carry me inside. So I was talking to my doctor, is there anything that we can do to make me better? Like, I feel like I'm trying everything. I don't know what other avenues are open to me. So I went to get a CAT scan and talked to my lung specialist. I was also getting physiotherapy a couple of times a month, or sometimes up to a week, to help move the sputum out. And my lung specialist said, well, one of our options is to remove the most damaged portions of my lungs in an attempt to make it harder for infections to sit in these damaged areas. Because essentially what bronchiectasis is where you've got, your lungs are like these multiple bunches of grapes. And what had happened with the multiple infections is that that thin skin between each grape had broken apart to form a larger surface area. Yeah, and cilia had broken down, hence the difficulty moving the sputum out of the lung area. So they thought, well, if we can go in and surgically remove the damaged portions of my lungs, which would, I think they were talking about removing about a third, the lower portions of both lungs, potentially half of my right lung. And then I spoke to a friend of mine who was doing chronic fatigue, and she told me about the switch. And I was at a point where I was like, what can I do? This is both scary to get this operation and incredibly exciting. The thought that I could be well and live the life that I wanted and go and climb mountains and go free diving, and it was so enticing. I thought, before I go get this pretty extreme surgery, let me just try this out. And to be honest, the very highly logical, highly scientific part of my brain was like, well, it's probably not going to do anything, because who can heal their body with their mind? Yeah. Like, come on.
At least you had that foresight to see what it could look like. You know, like you had a vision of what that could look like. If only I could, what that look like and how would I feel? Because I want that feeling. I want to know what that looks like. So at least you had that first and foremost. I'm still sort of baffled by, you know, with all that loaded upon you, particularly doing a master's, and then your physical and mental, emotional situation was hampered by stress as well, family disengagement. We touched upon a little bit of that. Coming into a new country, making new friends and a new environment, transitionally, that's tough as well. So, you just friggin' amaze me, right? You friggin' amaze me with your story. So could you just please take us to that next part of your story when you went to the switch, and tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, so thank you. I really appreciate hearing that from you. Yeah, so I remember arriving at Mel's mom's place and walking through that door and walking up the stairs into the room, and Mel just being like, "You are going to get well. I will accept nothing less. Like, there is no reason for you not to get well." And over the 4 days that I was with her, I love dance fitness. Dance is just something that brings me so much joy. And I really enjoy the high cardio dance fitness like body jam. And on the third day of the switch, our integration day, I went to a body jam class in Auckland, and I remember looking at my asthma inhaler in the locker room when I was getting changed, and I was like, right, if I'm going to truly believe that I don't need this, then I am not going to bring it in with me. And usually I would use it, I would do a couple of puffs beforehand, before the class, and then throughout the class, I would use it 3 or 4 times. And instead, I was dancing and I was really focused. I am well. I can do this. My lungs are fine. I can breathe. I will be okay. And I kept doing asthma throughout the class, and I would just go back and step to the back of the class. And I was like, I didn't even step outside. I was like, I don't have time for this. And I would do a switch right there behind all of these people where the instructors could see me. I was like, I don't care. I need to do this for me. And every time I did a switch, the asthma would die down and I'd get back in, and it'd come back up, and I'd step back to the back of the class and I'd do another switch. And I got through that entire class without using my asthma inhaler once. And I just remember the joy of feeling like this was actually possible.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible. The fact that you were so reliant on taking things that your belief in actually getting you to that stage was so empowering, empowering that you can do it, you can achieve it, and you move past that blocker that always blocked you from getting to that next stage. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. And I can feel it from you that was such a big pivotal moment in your life. Such a pivotal moment of your life. And thanks for expressing that to us, because I think this is what drives me, inspires me when I hear people like you take us through your journey. And it is a journey and a half, I have to admit. It's the most incredible story I think I've heard for a long, long time. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. So in that space where you've moved from, remember people, I don't know, I've never met Shannon, I don't know the story. This is the first time I've actually heard it. Talking about authentic and being just jump into it and just have a conversation, right? So with that belief that you went from that position, what was the next stage through the switch program?
Well, I still had a CAT scan set up to assess whether I was eligible for this surgery. So at the end of the switch process, because when I entered into doing the switch, I thought, well, it's never going to help me with my lungs. Like, that's not possible, because I'd been told lungs don't heal. And I'd been told that I would never reach, like at the most, I'd reached 80% lung capacity. And that's at the best case scenario. Now I'm at like 91 or 93% or something like that. Yeah. So I went into the switch thinking, well, I'm doing pretty severe depression and suicidal ideation, hugely anxious, massive insomnia. At least it can help me with that. Like, the first time I did the switch, it helped hugely. My mood definitely lifted, but to be honest, it helped far more with my lungs and the chronic sinusitis, chronic rhinitis that I was doing. And I went to go And it turned out that the depression and anxiety were actually the foundation of the lung and nasal illnesses. So after doing the switch, I went and had this CAT scan, and I went to go and see my ear, nose, and throat specialist and my lung specialist. And my ear, nose, and throat specialist looked at my CAT scan and he was like, I don't understand why you're here, because you don't have chronic sinusitis. Like, your nasal passages are beautiful, they're perfect. You don't need to take this medication that I'd been taking for, I think, 10, 12 years every day for that at that point.
That's so exciting. Like, how long after the switch did you have that appointment?
Like 6 weeks.
Wow. Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing that they can
Yeah.
see, like, physically this problem just isn't here anymore after so many years?
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And
Man, oh,
then
man.
yeah, and then seeing the lung specialist, and he looked at the CAT scan. He was like, you've definitely got damage here. You've had repeated infections, in the same way where if it had been a car crash or something like that, or I'd had severe burns, you know, I'd have some sort of scar tissue. You know, there is damage to the lungs. I still have this persistent cough, which I'm working on, and it gets less and less every year. But I saw my lung specialist, and again, he was just like, why are you wasting my time? In the nicest way possible. He was like, why are you here? You don't need this operation. And I remember going out, and I filmed one of my first videos on the Switch Celebration group page, sat in Hagley Park. I felt, yeah, it was euphoric. I felt euphoric.
That's amazing.
Oh, Mel, firstly, incredible that I've never been in Mel's program, but firstly, congratulations on turning someone with so many issues and challenges into someone who has got massive belief in terms of dealing with the emotions of past trauma and physical trauma combined, to now see her, oh my God, grow into what I see an absolute beautiful person who is, I'm assuming it's going to inspire other people. What masters did you do, by the way?
It was a Masters of Conservation Ecology.
Oh, wow. That just resonates with it just resonates in you.
Yeah.
You can tell. So.
And you need good lungs to be out there walking up and down those bush tracks doing your conservation work.
Yeah. Since then, I've worked. Like, it used to be that I would bike home from school and it would be raining, and I'd be like, oh no, I'm gonna get wet, and then I'm gonna get cold, and then I'm going to get sick. That was my mantra in my head, was I'm going to get sick. And like, it was just constant. Every moment of every day was assessing this equation of how likely are these circumstances going to equate to being ill. And since then, I've literally, like, I've worked on like steep hillsides planting trees in the snow, and the only part of me that was dry was this thin band where my raincoat just overlapped my rain pants, and I was wearing 2 raincoats and 2 sets of rain pants, and I was still soaked all the way through. And the next day I did get a cold, and I was sick for a couple of days, but I didn't need antibiotics. I didn't need to go see my doctor. And everyone that I'd been working with, we all got sick after that day. Yeah.
So tell me that. So a lot of it, what I feel is a lot of change the way you focus and the meaning you give things. Instead of looking at what could go wrong, you look at things that are possible. Would that be correct?
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah, one of the things that Mel has taught me that I think of a lot is sick versus SIP thinking, which is sick being to scan your life for problems and then catastrophize those, and positive thinking is scan your life for the good things and positivize.
So tell me about that. So we're speaking on our episode 3. Take me back to where, if you were to do that 5 years ago, how would you be thinking to now? How would you think?
I was just full of fear. Every
Nice.
day was just fearful. I'm failing everything, and like it was never good enough. My bar was so high for myself, this need for perfection. I could never win.
Switch times from when you were 5 years ago to now sitting in front of us now. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I had a moment after I did the switch again last year where you know when you're crying and it's like if you've experienced it where you're crying for no reason and you're gasping crying, you can't stop yourself. It's just these racking sobs that you can't stop. After I did the switch, I had that, but laughing. I laughed like straight for like half an hour. I couldn't stop. It was for no reason. I was walking around the backyard. I was like, people must think I'm absolutely nuts, but I can't stop. I just felt so good.
I don't even know that story, Shannon.
Don't you? Oh, I took a little film of it and I kept meaning to send it to you. I was just like, I can't stop laughing. What's going on?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What then was your breakthrough to shift through those emotions and manage to get to that place where you're just laughing and joyful?
I had these deep core wounds and these core beliefs inside my brain, these programs that said that the world is unsafe. It is not safe to be loved. The world will hurt you. And convincing my brain that that was the case, that was not the case, rather, was a real. I had to be persistent, and I just had to keep telling my brain over and over and over that, excuse me, that I suppose it's a little bit like if you live your entire life with sunglasses on and tinted sunglasses, you don't, and everyone's saying like it's a beautiful sunny day, and you're saying, oh, it's actually quite dark. I don't know what you're talking about. And doing the switch was this slow process of rewiring my brain to the extent where it felt safe to take off those sunglasses and start seeing what everyone else was seeing. And I think something that really helped me was visualizing. I visualize it now that in the very core part of my brain, there's a little cave. And inside this little cave lives my caveman. And they get little bits of ticker tape out of the wall that say, oh, there's something stressful going on. Well, let's try fight. And they'll hit the big button of flight or panic or freeze. And those were these big, well-used buttons. And it was this, and I was trying to grow these buttons in that cave of calm and peace and you are loved. I am strong and powerful and have agency in the world. I'm no longer a child. I can do this.
Man, I love the fact that you're replacing those disempowering emotions with new files of empowering emotions.
This ability to say that my emotions are safe meant that those emotions could come back.
Yeah, so it's not just the world is not safe, it's my own emotions are not safe. So yeah, that you could retrain all of that, and then when you can feel, they don't need to sit inside your lungs building up a whole lot of sputum.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because everything's linked, and lungs are at a metaphoric level linked to grief. And because people say I'm drowning in grief, they're literally languaging something they don't consciously understand, that their grief is just sitting in their lungs, and for you that just sat there and built up so much. So fascinating, and want to just honor you for what a commitment you had to your journey and what you've achieved with it, and also for your willingness to share this with everyone else now, and sharing some quite big themes. It's deep stuff you're sharing with us. It's a gift to the world that you're offering.
Thank you, Mel. I really appreciate that, particularly because, like, for context, like, I had never told anyone my journey until July, not July last year, the year before now. Like, even partners, just like, you need to know, like, please, can I just shine some light in the cave that you're in? And that's why I'm telling the story today, is because I want other people to find a way out of this darkness, because it's confronting, but it's so worthwhile.
So if you had like one message to the viewers out there who are still lost in their chronic illness experience, what would be one thing you'd like to say to them to get them started on their own path?
To suspend your disbelief that it won't happen to you, and to allow yourself to just have a little bit of belief for yourself that there is something out there that will make a difference, and to just keep trying until you find that thing that clicks. And for me, and for so many other people, it was the switch. And I feel that everyone in my life could benefit from doing the switch. Like, I want my mom to go into it, I want my brother. You know, there's just so much healing that you can get from not extreme stories like mine, but to really allow yourself to hope, even when hope feels really hard to hold, and just keep fighting for yourself.
Wow.
Beautiful. That's amazing words, Shannon.
You articulate it so well. So well. Like, seriously. You should be doing the show. We need to have you on the show. Oh, my goodness. God bless you. All right. There is that light. You gave us so much hope. You shone a light. That was the word hope came up a lot. And thank you for your story. That's me for my story. But for Mal, if you want to finish it off and leave it, since you brought this wonderful lady, Shannon, into our third episode.
Yeah, I'm so honoured that you joined us, Shannon. And so far there's been just my story and Richie's story. You're our first guest, and what a way to start! It's been amazing. I'm just, I was already familiar with your story, but just hearing it all in one go is just like, wow. My eyes were prickly, my heart feels so light and full, and I'm so grateful, and I'm so excited at who's going to listen to this and get the benefit too. So thanks enormously for joining us. And we're going to be back next week with Mark Stafford's story. He is a sports commentator and now a radio presenter, and he has had a cancer journey that he'll be sharing with us. He's not one of my clients. It's not a switch story. We're looking for a whole range of recovery stories. So you can join us next week and hear Mark's amazing recovery story. So yeah, thank you, Shannon, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you so much to the two of you for putting this time in. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sunrise.